Okay, so get this. Did you know Van Gogh was fluent in 4 languages? Dutch, French, English, German.
Wow, really? I did not know that.
Yeah. The guy was not just some isolated artist, he was plugged into the world. And that's just one of the surprising things we're uncovering today as we deep dive into the life and art of Vincent van Gogh using Van Gogh, troubled soul and visionary artist, this new biography you've given us. We're going way beyond the surface to uncover the unexpected.
I love that. It's so exciting to have new source material like this. It's like we get this backstage pass to see the familiar Van Gogh story through fresh eyes and really dig into what made him tick, both as an artist,
Yeah.
right, but also as a person.
Exactly. And speaking of fresh eyes, this book really changed how I pictured Van Gogh's childhood. We all know, like, the guy loved the countryside.
Oh.
But this book talks about young Vincent, like, out in nature, not just enjoying it, but really observing colors, textures, the way the light hit things. It's like his artist's eye was already switched on.
That's crucial, right? I mean, that deep connection to nature, those early observations,
Yeah.
they weren't just fleeting moments. They formed, as the book argues, the foundation for his later work. The biography even draws parallels between specific landscapes from his childhood and how he composed his paintings later on. It's so fascinating.
That's what I love about a good biography, finding those aha moments where you see the connections. And get this, the book also mentions him playing piano for friends.
No way.
Van Gogh, like the piano man, who knew?
I know, right. It really challenges that stereotype we have of him in our minds. You know, Van Gogh is just a tortured soul. The book really does a good job of showing us he had this rich inner life, a variety of interests and talents, music, languages, literature. This complexity is what fueled his art. It wasn't just angst on a canvas. It was informed by a lifetime of observations and passions.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got young Vincent soaking up the world, expressing himself, but then the book takes an interesting turn. London calling, but not for music this time, for an art dealership.
Whoa.
It is a surprising chapter, right?
Somebody,
You'd think Van Gogh, surrounded by art in London, must have been in heaven, but the book tells a different story, and this is where things get really interesting. So picture this, Van Gogh in the heart of Victorian London, working at an art dealership. You'd think, like, he'd be surrounded by all these like-minded souls, but
Yeah, not so much.
it wasn't the inspiring environment you might imagine.
No, not at all. And the book really highlights how this experience, it really shaped his future choices.
And not in a good way.
Yeah, and, I think this contrast is really crucial. Remember how we were talking about his childhood? All about observing nature, connecting with emotion? London was like the opposite. He saw firsthand this pressure to conform, to produce what sold, not what moved you.
He found the whole art scene there, like, totally soul-crushing, right?
Totally. And the book actually quotes from some of his letters from this time, and you can just really sense his disillusionment.
Which makes his next move all the more radical. It's like he said goodbye to the traditional art world and embraced a completely different path. Hello, Arles.
And thank goodness he did, because Arles is where we get the Van Gogh we know and love.
Right, it's the turning point that, like, everyone thinks they know. Sunflowers, breakdowns, the south of France. But this biography, like, it adds some important layers to that narrative.
It does. It doesn't shy away from the darkness,
Yeah.
the mental health struggles, which we know are very real. But it also shows us this incredible burst of creativity, this outpouring of art inspired by the landscape, the light. It's about finding the nuance, right?
Yeah.
Yes, there's darkness, but there's also this passionate response to the beauty that's surrounding him. It's all intertwined.
And one of the things I found so fascinating in this section was, like, how he decorated the yellow house. The book really brings this period to life.
Yeah, I love that part.
Like, it wasn't just a house, it was his canvas.
Totally. An extension of his art. And oh my gosh, it's so fascinating how he used color. Like, even the walls of the guest room weren't just white, they were different shades of yellow.
Yeah.
Creating this incredible sense of warmth and light. The book even mentions how he described the exact hues in his letters, talking about pale citron and sulfur yellow.
Wow, I never knew that. That's amazing. It's like he wanted to create a space where, like, artists could thrive, collaborate almost, like this utopian dream.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, what makes Arles so compelling. It embodies this incredible tension between his yearning for connection, for this community of artists, and his own internal struggles.
It's interesting, though, because for Van Gogh, that dream of an artist's utopia in Arles, well, it didn't exactly work out that way. And that's where the darkness, which the biography definitely doesn't shy away from, really comes in, it really made me see this period as such a pivotal point, not just for his art, but for him, like, as a person.
Oh, absolutely. And the book does not sugarcoat his struggles with mental health at all, and you can really feel how deeply they impacted his relationships, his work, his entire outlook.
Yeah, and one thing I thought was really interesting was how the book kind of explores his mental health through this modern lens. It suggests that with today's knowledge, he might have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder or even like the effects of lead poisoning from his paints.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine?
I know. Such a fascinating thought experiment.
Right.
Like, imagine if he'd had access to modern treatments. Would medication have changed his art? Would he have even wanted it to? These are questions we can't answer, but it just, like, adds this whole new dimension to his story.
Totally. It's almost like by trying to understand his struggles, we can kind of understand the triumph of his art even more. But the book doesn't stop there. It also talks about his legacy, and it goes way beyond just canvases in museums.
Absolutely. I think this is where Van Gogh's story really transcends art history and
Yeah.
becomes something much more universal.
Right. It's like he represents this artist battling for their vision, the outsider trying to make their voice heard. That's something we can all connect to, whether we're painters, poets,
Podcast hosts, even.
podcast hosts. Exactly. And the book gives some great examples of that reach. Novels like Lust for Life, Don McLean's song, Vincent. They even had that animated film a few years ago. It's incredible.
It really speaks to how deeply his story resonates with people even now.
Mm.
He captured something very raw and essential about the human experience, the highs, the lows, the struggle to create something meaningful in your life.
So as we kind of come to the end of our deep dive here, I'm left with this like lingering question. If Van Gogh were alive today in our world of social media and, instant, or at least the illusion of instant fame, would he have found that connection that he so clearly craved? Would he be like sharing his work on Instagram, live tweeting his breakdowns?
It's the question, right? It's a question with no easy answer. It's almost like a Rorschach test. Like, how we answer that question says more about us and our relationship with art and fame than it does about Van Gogh himself.
That's so true. And I think that's the mark of a truly great deep dive. It leaves you with more to think about long after you've, finished the book. It's not just about learning facts. It's about sparking those conversations, those what ifs that just kind of linger in your mind.
Yeah, and I think in Van Gogh's case, those conversations are more relevant than ever. What does it mean to be an artist in a world like ours? How do we balance self-expression with the pressures of the art market, of social media? I mean, these are questions that he was grappling with over a century ago, and they feel just as urgent today.
So if you're looking for a story that will challenge you, inspire you, and leave you pondering life's big questions, definitely add Van Gogh, troubled soul and visionary artist, to your